Welcome. For those of you that may not know me, I'm Kathy Clarkin, and I'm co-chair of NEST, the Naperville Environment and Sustainability Task Force. And first announcement is there are free tomatoes over there, so don't miss that on your way out. So let me just get this slide up. So our agenda for tonight is I'm going to start with announcements so that you cannot leave before you hear our announcements, okay? And then last month, if you were here, you know that we had a community feedback session on sustainability. And if you weren't here, we're going to give you a little readout of what we talked about. That meeting kind of, there was a lot of things that we talked about. So this is just going to kind of sum that up. And then we will have our featured speaker, Mimi Cohen, and wrap up at the end. So just a reminder about who we are as NEST. Usually we put our mission statement up here, but we're a task force for the city of Naperville, which means our main job is to advise our city government on sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction. And we also have a mandate to educate our community, our business community, our nonprofits, just generally in Naperville on these topics of sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction. So having a discussion today about civic engagement, I think is really critical for us to do a good job of that, to understand how we engage with our elected officials. All right. Our first announcement is next month on September 25th, we are having a giant community meeting, and we want all of you to come, and we want all of you to bring as many people as you can. Share this with whatever other communities you're part of, civic organizations, religious organizations. We're going to be talking about Naperville's coal problem and what we can do about it. So if you don't know, about 77% of your electricity comes from burning coal, which I assume if you're here, you care about climate change and you care about breathing healthy air, and you care about those people that live close to those coal plants are exposed to that pollution. And so we don't have to continue with that. We can make a plan to transition to clean energy, and that's what that program is going to be about. And the reason that we want all of you and all of your friends to attend is because that will send a message to our elected officials that Naperville cares about this, because we care about doing our part to address climate change. I mean, we have 100-degree temperatures coming this week. We saw the fires in Maui. Climate change is here, and it's not going to get better unless we do something about it. So that will help send that message in a constructive way, in a collaborative way. We are here to work together to solve this. So please come. And part of that is because we are hoping to have a lot of people there, we do need some help at the event itself. So there is a sign-up sheet on your way out if you want to help. Like, we're going to pass out cards for people to ask questions. We're going to have some handouts. We want to greet the elected officials that we're expecting to be there. So if you can help that night, we would love for you to sign up so you can sign up on your way out. And we also need help publicizing the event, so you can sign up to help with that. So that would be like posting on your social media, again, talking to your whatever other organizations you're part of. If you have connections with the media, whatever, you can sign up to help us spread the word. And also, Bill over here is our community engagement team leader, and he's going to be leading a meeting tomorrow evening on community engagement. So we're going to be planning to publicize this event. And if you want to join that meeting, you can find that on our events page on the website. Then our next meeting after the September meeting is going to be the third Monday in October, and that is going to be kind of learning more about how to get involved with Nest, learning more about what we do. We're going to have kind of like a volunteer fair and exhibit to show what we do and how you can get involved. And then my last announcement is we have a high school program called BLAST, which is Building Leadership Around Sustainable Transformation. It's for high school students to come up with a project that solves some sort of environmental problem, and then they participate in like kind of a Shark Tank kind of event. And so I just wanted to note that we have this. So if you know any teachers or high school students that might want to participate, they should go to our website and look for that program. Or if you know of any, you know, businesses that would like to sponsor it, we're looking for that as well. Any questions so far? All right. All right, so getting to our, just a quick summary, I won't go into too much detail, but of our meeting last month. So these are kind of the big ideas that came out of the discussion that our community had around sustainability. So the power of community, you know, no one person can solve these, no one person can create a political will for change, but together we can come together and, you know, really make a difference. And the people in this room last month really like appreciated that idea, that it is a team effort. We talked about normalizing sustainability. So we know that our individual choices individually don't make too much of a difference, but collectively they do make a difference. And so when things become normalized, it's easier for those people that don't know about that much about sustainability to make the right choice. You know, when there are more and cheaper EVs and more charging, it's going to be easier to get an EV. So we talked about that. How can we just make these things more normal so you don't have to have like a PhD in sustainability to take the right steps. We talked about visible leadership as an important issue. So we want our city government to lead on sustainability. And we want to see that. We want to see it on the side of buses and park benches and things like that. So it becomes more something that people are just encountering on a regular basis. Education was another thing that came up a lot in our conversations in our various groups last time. Again, you know, people maybe don't know what incentives are available, you know, what are the good carbon reducing choices they can make. So we need to get some education out there. And some of that education can come from people like us in Nest, but also it needs to come from our city government. And finally, to really create change, we do need regulations and incentives coming from the government. It can't just be all on individuals. So any questions or comments about that? Anybody that was there last time that wants to pipe in? Yes.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
So for those of you who weren't here, I mean, this room was full. This room was full, and it was these ideas came out of a lot of energy, you know, of the people, some passion. We had little groups, you know, huddled around, you know, in the discussion where these ideas came up. So we put some prompted questions. So we experienced in this room right here a lot of passion for nature, and that's what this all came from. So it was exciting to see that, and gives us hope that you know, 25th will be a very, we expect even more, a lot more at that meeting. So we encourage you, just some comments.
Thanks. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes, yes. Good question. That would be a good problem to have. Yeah. Yeah. Amy? Yes. That's a good point. We should maybe alert people to that, but not scare them off. Do we have a question from the online?
Questions, so if you could repeat the question.
Oh, sure. Got it.
How many people did you have
Online, we have
400?
10?
10.
All right. So again, when we work on these issues, we work on them for a reason, because we want cleaner air to breathe, right? We know that the planet is warming, and we know that we have an obligation to take part in addressing that. So carbon reduction. We had people last week or last month that said they want dark skies at night. I see some enthusiasm for that. Actually, I recently read this book. It's not just to look at the stars, but it really impacts our living world when we have too much light. It's not good for the insects and the birds and the plants when we have too much light at night. So people want that financial savings that comes with energy efficiency and renewable energy and taking advantage of all the federal and local incentives. We heard a lot in that room about people cared about the natural world a lot. They wanted to support biodiversity. And somebody even mentioned that if we do these things, it will bring us peace of mind. And specifically, these are the kind of things that Nest is working on, and these are the things that actually came up from the community of what should be our priorities of specific areas that Nest, as well as our community, as well as our city government, should focus on. So I'm not going to read all of those out loud because I want to get to Mimi. So you can see all of those. And then finally, folks talked about how do we make these changes? How do we get to these goals? And, it starts with your personal action. Just like voting, what you do to reduce your carbon footprint is a small little piece, but you still need to do it. It makes a difference. And then you can use your influence in your own network. I know Carl has told stories about he got solar and then people he knows got solar, and I got a heat pump and I talked to everyone about getting heat pump. I know a bunch of people have done that. So then you can also get involved in a community organization like Nest, or bring these ideas to your own organization. And finally, political engagement is really going to help make those system and policy changes that we need. So that brings me to Mimi. So Mimi is the former chair of the Will County Board, and she is currently the Director of Government Affairs at the Field Museum. And we will do a little logistics here, changing slideshows, and then I'll let her get started. So. Okay, there we go. Sorry, there it is. All right. That did not work. What happened? Sorry, Pat. It went away.
Well, they're figuring it out.
Sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name's Mimi Cowan. Like Kathy said, I am
Right,
currently
you do
the
it.
Director of Government Affairs at the Field Museum. Today was my 6th day on the job. Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Let's
How's
clip.
it going?
I came back after the weekend, so I am the official government rep for the dinosaurs, which is a lot of fun. But I am a Naperville resident. I live in the Will County portion of Naperville, and I was born and raised here. My thank you to my parents who are there in the back row there. In fact, I grew up just down the street on Jackson next to the VFW. So these are my old stomping grounds, and was born and raised here, lived away for a number of years, came back a couple of years ago, got involved in local politics, crazy, and ran for county board. How many people here live in DuPage County? Most of the room. How many people live in Will County? Oh, actually, a good proportion. So for those of you in DuPage County, about 1/3 of Naperville is in Will County. When I was campaigning, usually once a day, I would knock on somebody's door and I would say, hi, I'm running for Will County board. And they'd say, oh, I live in DuPage County. And I would say, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, you actually live in Will County. So a whole lot of people think all of Naperville is in DuPage County, but it's not. I served one term on Will County board, and about a year into my term became chair of the board. We have a slightly different setup than DuPage County. So chair in Will County is sort of like the Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy, take your pick, of the board. So I'm the head of the legislative body, not the Tony Preckwinkle or the Deb Conroy of the board. But I opted not to run for re-election for a variety of reasons, many of which whatever comes to mind when I say I chose not to run for re-election, whatever's in your head, that's why I chose not to run for re-election. And chose to translate my skills into something else. I have a PhD in history, so and I taught for a number of years. So when this job at the field came up, I was like, so I can go talk about history and I can use all this stuff I've learned about government and politics and do it all in one. And they said, yeah. And I said, yes, yes, please. I would very much like to do that. So luckily they agreed, and that's what we're going to try to do. And I will say, here's a private citizen. This is all my own opinions, and certainly this is just that, my opinions about what I've found works and works best. And you could probably ask me tomorrow and I might have a different opinion, and you could certainly ask someone else and they might have a different opinion. One quick plug for the Field Museum. Chris and I were talking ahead of time about how if you're into climate science, the field, that is really one of their 4 pillars of their mission right now. They, as one of my supervisors explained to me, they have the data. They have 150 years worth of birds or fish or plants to show what the change in climate has done to species over time. And as he said to me, we can argue about what has caused that change in climate, but we can't argue that it has happened. We have the data to prove it. So if you're interested in learning more about that, if you want to visit the museum, I would love to have you down. Please come. Your state legislators have free passes, by the way, little known fact. So call up your state legislator. They'll be happy to give you a free pass. And if you're going to come, I'll put up my email address is there. I'd be happy to meet you and show you some of my favorite parts. I can find the bathroom and my office, and not a whole ton more yet. It's a really big place, but I'm working on it. So would be happy to see you all. But thank you to Kathy for inviting me today. This is a big topic, and I'm certainly excited to talk about it. And as I thought about how to talk about this, I kind of grouped my thoughts into who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I'm going to breeze through this, and then I do have an exercise. We'll see how well it works, but a fun, well, fun from my point of view, which may not be fun for anyone else, idea of what we can do with this. But who, we're going to go through these in details, but who are my elected officials at different levels? What should I be asking them for? Very important question. Where's the best place to complete my advocacy? That's kind of a how question too. When is the best time to complete my advocacy? Why? What's my why? What's my ask of them? And how do I best structure an advocacy plan? Typo there. I forgot one part of my resume. While I was on the county board, it's not a full-time job in Will County. They pay about 40% of what DuPage County Board does. So I had an additional full-time job, which those of you who know me probably know what that was. I was chief of staff for State Senator Laura Ellman. So I was also getting to know the state kind of side of things too. So kind of rounded out my experience in this. So I'll be talking a lot about that kind of the state advocacy part of this too. So who? Some of you probably know this, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of who your elected officials are in this area at the different levels. Of course, we have federal. You have Congress. So your senators are Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. Congressmen in Naperville right now, Bill Foster and Lauren Underwood, depending on where you live. At the State House, we have an enormous number of state legislators that represent Naperville. For every state Senate district, there are 2 state representatives within that district. Most of Naperville is represented by State Senator Laura Ellman and State Representative Janet Yang Rohr. So that's kind of the central part. In the East, you have Senator Don Curran and State Rep Ann Stava Murray. In the Southeast, you have Representative Dee Avalar and Senator Rachel Ventura. Let's see if I can do this all by memory. In the Southwest, where I am, so actually Central West, where I am, you have Senator Linda Holmes and State Rep Stephanie Kifowit. Southwest, you have Harry Benton and Senator Meg Capel. Northwest, you have Karina Villa and Maura Hirschauer. And north, you have Seth Lewis and Amy Grant. You have a list on your table as well. Did I forget anyone? I think that's about it. So thanks. So the bad news is it's a little broken up. The good news is you have a lot of advocates for Naperville, right? If you can get people all on the same page, you've got a lot of voices advocating for Naperville and Springfield. So I see that as a positive. We have 2 counties, DuPage and Will. I put all of your county board representatives on there. You've got 2 different districts in Will and at least 2 in DuPage. You might have a bit of a third, I'm not sure. There are technically 6 townships in that represent parts of Naperville, functionally 4. I think there's about a dozen houses in one of them and none in one of them, but Lisle Township, Naperville Township in DuPage County, and then in Will County, there's DuPage Township. Yes, you heard me right. DuPage Township is in Will County. As a historian, I'm convinced that involves someone stealing records in the middle of the night, but we'll go into that another time. And then Wheatland Township, also in Will County. City of Naperville. Then we have Naperville Park District, the school districts, the library board. Library board is not elected, it's appointed, but still sort of a board that's functioning to represent you. So you have a lot of people to advocate for who all can do something about sustainability and climate issues. You don't have to talk to all of them, but there are things that all of them can be doing. What's the right question to ask? This is really important. You don't want to ask your federal official to do something that your state person should be doing. You don't want to ask your city official to be doing something your congressional rep should be doing. You want to look informed and get the right person to ask the right thing. I'll use an example. Kathy briefly mentioned getting signage on buses. Naperville has no city buses. So do not ask your city council members to put signage on buses. You would need to go to PACE. PACE is a regional authority, sub-authority of the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority. The chair of PACE is Rick Kwasniewski. He is the former mayor of Lamont. The regional reps for the rep for Will County is John Noak, mayor of Romeoville. The DuPage County rep is, I think his name is Mark Cucci, I want to say, former mayor of Elmhurst. So those are your representatives on PACE. If you want something on a bus, those are the people you have to talk to. So you have to know the right question to ask the right people, right? So what are you going to ask Congress? One of the things I did want to talk about, you don't have to petition Congress about the Inflation Reduction Act because it's already passed, but I did want to mention the IRA. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act, but don't be mistaken, this is the largest piece of climate legislation that's been passed in our lifetime and probably ever. Probably something that could not have been passed by, it's arguable, this is opinion, probably couldn't have been passed by anyone but Joe Biden. Love him or hate him, and there's reasons on both sides. The man knows how to get legislation passed. So this is a little breakdown of some of the stuff that's in there. Having worked for the state just prior to my last job, there are so many grant programs coming out of the IRA right now, and every single one of them, even the ones that don't seem to be technically related to climate change, have climate justice, green energy. They all have it built into these grant programs. Every single, we at the state applied for a manufacturing leadership grant, and 40% of the grant application had to be about climate justice initiatives. So that's the Inflation Reduction Act at work. This is huge climate legislation. So if someone tells you that nothing's being done at the federal level about climate, get to know the IRA. It's a really important piece of legislation. But Congress obviously can do a lot of things, incentives. They can work on federal legislation for incentives. They can work on international issues. The Illinois General Assembly, a couple of years ago, passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. You might hear it referred to as CEJA. CEJA is pretty messy, it's pretty big. They have some work to do with it, but similarly, it is hallmark legislation, leadership legislation, seen as a leadership legislation piece throughout the nation. Get to know CEJA. It is a massive piece of legislation that includes a whole bunch of stuff around climate and energy that is coming down the pike. So I won't go all into that, but it's safe to say that Governor Pritzker wants to brand himself as the climate guy. He wants to be the climate governor, the green energy governor, and he probably wants to be the green energy president, but that's a whole nother conversation. So what can you ask your state legislators about? You can press them for making sure that CEJA is on track and moving forward. You can press them for incentives for green energy companies. Incentives are tricky things. That means incentives means tax abatements, right? So they are controversial things. But do you want green energy companies to be able to sustain and live and employ people in Illinois? It's a question you can ask, but you can advocate for those kind of things. But it's about advocating for the right things at the right levels, right? Will and DuPage counties, at the county level, from my experience on the county board, the thing I left biggest here, we could be using way more renewable energy to power our counties. These are votes we take every year. What is the power mix that we are going to use to power county facilities? It was a fight in Will County. I don't know what it was like in DuPage County, but you could pressure your county board advocates to rely more on renewable energy at the county. The counties could offer greater rebate programs like they do at the municipalities, but these would be for unincorporated residents. The county is the local government for unincorporated residents. So think of all the services that the county provides to everyone is one thing, but then the county also provides the services that a municipality would to unincorporated residents. So anything you get from the city as a municipal resident that you think an unincorporated resident should get, that would be something you could advocate for that the county does. Certainly any of these levels of governments, native plants on their campuses, green roofs, getting their fleet vehicles to all EVs. And, you know, I think, Kathy, you said something about our individual actions necessarily don't always matter, but it's the collective. I think that's how I feel a lot about things like EVs with government bodies. It's not that if Naperville changes all to EVs, that necessarily makes a big top line difference in the balance sheet, but it's a leadership. It's a signal, right? So do we want to be leaders? And, you know, we also have to be honest about the budget effect currently, right? We have to be realistic to our leaders and say, I'm willing to pay more in my taxes about that because they're going to be worried about it, right? And we have to show them where there can be savings down the road because there can be. And we have to convince them of that. But keep in mind that the counties are also your forest preserves. So greater connectivity to walking and biking trails. Of course, you have your municipal park districts. They work well with your forest preserves. But if you want greater connectivity, pressure your forest preserve representatives to do more with the park districts. The forest preserves tend to be a little more foresty than the park districts, right? The park districts provide games and sports and activities. The forest preserves shy away from that a little bit. They do some, but they have less of a, everybody plays soccer kind of thing, going. So get them to focus together with the park districts on like the connectivity of the rails and the trails and the bike paths. Modernizing infrastructure, whether that's EV stations, but also our bridges and tunnels and roads. A lot of the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of CEJA is focused on our actual infrastructure and what that does to climate, what we're doing with that big picture long term. There is substantial climate impact in modernizing that and what we're doing in the process of how that is constructed, how it's deconstructed, how it's reconstructed. It's not the sexy stuff, but it's actually pretty important. So at all levels of government, that modernization of infrastructure is really important. City, I put one thing on here and one thing only. Follow the NEST 2036 plan. So the NEST 2036 will tell you what you can advocate for at the city. Certainly, all of our other levels of government, townships, park district, library. I put a picture up there of Lion school buses. I got to cut the ribbon, do the, not the ribbon cutting, I got to do the groundbreaking at Lion when I was chair of the county board. So it's the electric school bus manufacturer just south of Joliet. They just started rolling buses off the line a couple months ago, and it's really exciting. This is the largest manufacturer of EV school buses and sort of like delivery van vehicle, like those Amazon buses in the United States. It's a Canadian company. And it's right here in our area. So get your school districts to buy EVs, pressure them to buy EVs. Native plants, green roofs, they can all do these things. Convince them of the economy of it, convince them of the need for it, of the necessity for it at every level of government. Next stop on this tour, where? So this is kind of like the technique. How do you advocate for these things? And depending on who you're talking to, there are better or worse ways to contact them. And this is where we really get into opinion. This is my opinion of what works well and what doesn't work well. If you're talking to a congressional representative, in person, in their office, I think is best, if you can get a meeting with them. If you can get a meeting with their staff, that's really good too. They're busy people. Luckily, our representatives are pretty open and accessible people here. I do have in their DC office being very effective. If you're the type of person that can get a DC office meeting, great. If you represent an organization that can go in and lobby in a DC office, you have swing and you should go and do that. That's fabulous. I put here emails as being least effective. And I know that's going to upset some people. But here's the thing. The easier it is for you to do, the less effective it really is. Because basically, especially those form emails, God love you, but like if in a political office or in a government office, we get 250 form emails, we read one of them and we tally them and say we got 250 of them. If we got 200 of them or 150 of them, it's just a line that says 150 or 200 or 250. There's no bar that suddenly it's like, oh crap, we got, over this many, now we have to do something, right? The impact is not really there. It's also really dependent on what the issue is. If you're sending emails to somebody who already kind of knows how they're voting, 9 times out of 10, these people know how they're voting, right? So your form email isn't doing a whole lot. Marjorie Taylor Greene, sending an email to Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't changing her mind, right? So unless you are somehow providing new information to someone who is open to the new information, or you're getting someone who is waffling and has an election coming up, and you can provide an overwhelming number of emails, those emails are not terribly effective. And I'm not saying don't send them, but they're just not the most effective thing, especially for deep advocacy in the terms of what we're talking about. Phone calls, a little bit more effective because somebody has to pick up that phone and talk to you. USPS letter, if you handwrite me a letter, again, as a staff member, if I have to open letters and read them and they aren't form letters, again, it's going to trigger a little bit more of like a, oh boy, people wrote these letters. So again, think about the easier it is for you, the less impactful it is down the road, okay? So the more important it is for you, put more work into it. Sort of similar with General Assembly. Your state representatives are very accessible. You want a meeting with them in district, except for maybe Amy Grant. She's a little hard to get in touch with. In district, in person, meet with them. Tell them what you think. Going to Springfield, unless you are a part of an organization that's going for a lobby day, that's one thing. But in Springfield, legislators are pulled 95 different directions on a single day. Unless you are part of an organized effort It is really tough to get their attention in Springfield. Emails, same thing. Phone calls, again, a little bit better. Written letter, a little bit better. Now we have to talk about witness slips. Raise your hand if you know what a witness slip is. Okay, about half the room. I'm gonna break everybody's heart here. Yeah. Okay, so witness slips, for those of you who don't know what witness slips are. So witness slips are something that the General Assembly has. And you can basically go online at certain points in the legislative process, and you can file through this like electronic process. You register as, you put in your name and the organization you represent, or you can represent yourself, and you say either I am opposed to or in support of this bill. You can do it when it's in committee or when it's up for a full vote, whatever. And then on any online, you can go in and you can check, okay, who filed witness slips in favor or opposed to this bill? And there's this whole record. The original intent of witness slips was before the internet age. It was when lobbyists would be down in Springfield, and legislators wanted basically a written record of which organizations and businesses were for or against a certain bill, okay? So that they could go and look up the list of who was for or against. It was a shorthand way so they didn't have to keep their own records of what organizations were for or against a certain bill. So they could say, oh, this bill's coming up. Are the operating engineers for or against this? Is the Illinois Environmental Council for or against this? So when 150 citizens go and file a witness slip, it is not all that effective. We do not run our government by referendum. A lot of people, and I've heard this, when there's a contentious bill, say, well, there were 5,000 witness slips filed in support of the bill, but the legislators voted against it. Well, there's way more than 5,000 voters in Illinois. This is not a referendum. So, and I'll get into this a little bit later, we do not run our government by referendum. In fact, if a legislator says to you, well, there were 5,000 people who filed witness slips against it, so I voted against it, you should be very wary of that legislator because they are shirking their duty. We do not run our government by referendum. You have elected people to do their own research. That's a terrible phrase these days. You have elected people to do research, to dig into the issues, to listen to experts, and to know more than the average citizen about highly complex issues. They should not be swung by 5,000 people putting in an opinion online. So, witness slips, not entirely effective. Again, my personal opinion. Still feel free to do them. County, city, and other local bodies. This is where things kind of flip. Obviously, if you can meet these people in person, and you can, very effective. Speaking at a meeting, emails, a little bit more effective than other levels of government. Phone calls, very effective, because in local government, we don't have staff to answer the calls. If as a local elected official, I get 15 voicemails, I'm stuck all day answering the phone. This makes a difference, right? And I feel obligated to call all of you back. Same thing with letters. I want to go back to the speaking at a meeting here. I know you're all talking about showing up at a meeting. You should, that's great. Here's the thing about showing up at a meeting, and you don't, there's not a big vote that you're talking about, so you should show up at that meeting. If you are showing up at a meeting where a vote is happening, you are too late. You are too late. You have not done your homework as an advocate. Because again, by the time you get to a meeting, almost almost everyone on that dais has made up their mind. And now we go back to, again, we do not run our government by referendum. If you are showing up at a meeting, there's probably at best one person on that dais who is going to be swung by 500 people in the room. And frankly, you should be very afraid of that person, because what they are doing is going like this. And maybe it works out in your favor in that moment. But what they're looking for is to be reelected. They haven't done their homework. They have not been convinced by facts and data. They have been convinced by what they fear at the polls. That is not the kind of elected official I want. As a last-ditch effort, it works. But they might be just as easily swung by another crowd of 500. So if you have to show up at a meeting en masse, do. But do the work ahead of time. And what that work means is the most important thing in politics is knowing how to count. You've got 9 city council members. You only have to count to 5. You only have to count to 5. Maybe 6, just feel good about it, right? So count to 6, get those 6 votes. Don't worry about the other 3. No, yes. No, please.
So I just want to quibble with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I've seen that in very, and but you're right, what people do, people are effective. They figure out to speak.
Yes. Yes,
Then get a checkbox very.
I agree.
So if you just lump all meetings together, that's kind of ambiguous.
Right.
That's a specific type of. And your point, I really liked it about, you gotta show up early.
Yep.
And then talk and talk and talk and talk, and then there's the.
Yep.
That's how you.
I would agree with the caveat. I would agree. And because like I said, if you're showing up at a vote meeting, yeah, right? But I would rather have one-on-one conversations with the people I know I need to talk to ahead of time. So I would rather look at my 9 city council members, and I would rather know them well, and I'm going to get into this a little bit, know your audience, right? I would rather go, okay, I've got these nine folks. I know I only need 5 of them. I know 2 of them are never going to vote with me. So I am not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste their time, and I'm not going to waste my time. I know 3 of them are good. I've checked in with them. They're good. I've texted them or called them and been like, you good? They're like, I'm good. We're done. We've had a 15-second conversation. Now I don't have to waste their time or my time. So I've got 5 totally settled. So I've got 3 that I know. So now I've only got to spend time with 3.
So I would argue that you, because our city council said directly to us from the day, so I've been doing this for 4 years.
Yeah.
From day 1, is you need to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
You need to not just hear from you guys.
I think that's fair. I think on some of these things, because I think also, and actually I get to this, some of your members will be with you no matter what, right? But then there's some of them, you have to ask them what they need. And if they say to you, I need 150 people at a meeting, then you go, okay,
They're never that.
I'll bring 150 people to a meeting. But they told you they needed support, right? We need to hear from citizens. You can translate that as I need 150 people at a meeting, right? So you go, okay, I'll bring people to speak. And I think that's a great point. That sometimes what your supporters need, your elected officials who are supporters, what they need is public support. So as advocates, one of the things you do is gather political support for your elected officials who want to support you. When do we do this? So I'm going to focus this on General Assembly because City Council is year round, county board is year round, libraries year round, school is year round. With the caveat that you have to pay attention to timing of votes. You have to pay attention to the budget schedule. The budget is like the one ring that rules them all. If it's not in the budget, it doesn't happen. So that's very important. But General Assembly and Congress, they meet at certain times. General Assembly is very specific. If you come to a state legislator in May and you're like, I've got this great idea for a bill, they know you don't know what you're talking about. Because May is when everything happens. So they don't have time to talk to you about new ideas in May. So don't bring new ideas to state legislators in May. So what you want to do, if you've got a new idea for a bill, or you want to introduce yourself to a legislator, June, July, August is a great time to get to know your legislators. Meet with them. This can be your chit chat time. Get to know you time, invite them to events. They have free time. They want to be out in the community. This is a great idea, a great time to discuss platforms, give them a one-pager. Great time to do that. Fall is a great time to bring draft legislation to legislators. Legislators love it when you write legislation for them. They have the Legislative Research Bureau who will actually dress it up and write it. But if you have a legal team in your organization that will write it, they will take it. They will fix it up. They will put it into the law the way that it needs to go, but you can certainly draft it up. Fall is when you would ask them, will you be willing to sponsor this bill? Get agreements to sponsor a bill. They can file stuff beginning then. The regular session starts in January. Committee hearings begin. You can start to watch online for filing deadlines. There's a whole calendar of when filing deadlines happen, deadlines for the committees and for bills to move in and out of the House and the Senate. There's a whole kind of pattern to things. Winter into spring, you can offer to assist legislators, to lobby other legislators to help co-sponsor. And then all of this wraps up by the end of May. It's usually a huge rush. They're not very good at time management, in my opinion. Usually the last few weeks of May, they stay up all night and get all the legislation passed. I'm like, couldn't we have done this nice and slow and evenly throughout the whole season? But no, by the end of May, they're all wrapped up and they're ready to come home and start it all over again. There are a couple weeks in the fall called veto session, where they go and they can pass stuff. It's usually cleanup stuff. It's called veto session because it is the time where if the governor has vetoed something that the legislature could come back and override vetoes. Not a very common occurrence, but they call it veto session anyway. Why? My dissertation advisor beat it into me that every interaction should always have a good thesis statement. So I passed that trauma on to everyone else. So every interaction with an elected official, you should start with your thesis statement. I am here today because I want this from you. Or maybe not I want this from you, but I'm here today because I would really like to get to know you and what your priorities are in the state legislature. I'm here today because I am a resident of Naperville. I know you're newly elected to city council. I wanted to get to know you. I'm on Nest and I'm really passionate about climate change and I'm wondering where you stand on that. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the zip. Well, I'm not very good at the zip it, but like, and the zip it and then let them fill in the blank. Let them see what they say, you know? So make sure you have that ask, that why out front, so that they know why you're there. Because they will appreciate that, appreciate knowing why you're there. Every once in a while in the senator's office, we would get somebody in. We would always, anybody who wanted an appointment with the senator, I would schedule it for them. I would usually try to extract the purpose of the meeting first. And we had this one appointment where I was not successful in extracting the purpose. And this woman came in and she just wanted to chit chat. And it was the strangest meeting we ever had. And she was nice enough. And she turned around and walked out. And for those of you who know Laura Elman, she's very even keel. And she looked at me and she goes, "Do you think that was a political plant?" And I was like, that was the weirdest thing ever. So, but that gives you an idea of what legislators think if you don't come in with a purpose. They think you're trying to, like, catch them up on something. So yeah, be upfront about what your ask is. Is it that you just want to get to know them where they stand on your particular issue? Is it that you have a one-pager of bullet points that you're hoping they will, put forward in their time in office? Do you have a great new bill idea? I think, that's one really cool thing that I've discovered in the last few years. And I hope if you don't know that I hope you go away tonight with this message. If there's something you don't like, you can make a law and change it. It's really cool. I saw that happen in Senator Elman's office repeatedly, where people would come in and say, "I saw this problem and I had this idea." And then we went through the process and a law was made. And it was like, holy cow, like, we can do that. So one of them was something really, really intense. Some local residents who lost their son to an opioid overdose. Some of you probably know them. They're active in the community. And they found out that, and I share this with their permission, they found out that when their son overdosed, the group that he was with realized he was overdosing, but they were too afraid to call the police because they were afraid they were all going to get arrested. So the Greens said, "Hey, look, we would have rather had our kid than put these people in jail. So we would really like a law that says, if somebody's overdosing, you can call the police and you won't be arrested if there's drug paraphernalia laying around." And frankly, it's controversial because some people think that it lets drug dealers off the hook. And the Greens' response to this was, "I'd rather have my kid. And I'd rather have a second chance." So they passed a law. And, I think the response to that was, again, giving somebody a second chance to save their kid, and we'll worry about trying to track down the drug dealers later. So if there's something, whether it's at the city level or the state level, and you have an idea, bring it up. I think that's pretty powerful and kind of an exciting part of democracy. How? Layer your interactions. One thing I say about government relations, you want to make relationships before you need them. And I think this goes to your point. You don't want to show up at the meeting just when you want people to vote a certain way, right? You want people to know that you're there. You want them to know your name, your face. And for the people here, I think you guys already know this. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir on this. But you also want to make it a two-way interaction, that you're not just asking, and I think this is powerful too, you're not just asking your city council members for something, you have something to provide them. Elected officials are always looking for ways to meet people they don't know. And you guys all know a lot of people your elected officials don't know. So inviting them to community events, inviting them saying, "Hey, I'm going to host a backyard party in my neighborhood with 20 people. Doesn't even have to be a lot of people. And I would love for you to come and talk about what you're doing at the city. Or I would love for you to come and talk about what the state is doing about climate issues." They will jump at that. That then means you're a partner. It doesn't mean that you're going to vote for them. It doesn't mean you're supporting their campaign. It means that you're building a relationship with them. It also doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to vote for you, right? Vote for what you want them to vote for, but you are building a relationship. And it provides a better chance that when you come to them and say, hey, I've got this issue, that they're going to say, oh, I've talked to you before. We have a relationship. It's genuine. Let's talk, right? So that you're not just coming and asking for a favor. You've built a relationship with them. I think that's really, really important. Ask for in-district meetings. Do it at the right time of year, for especially state legislators and Congress. Send emails, despite what I said before. Send emails, send letters, make calls, get other people to do it. Check in with them, especially on specific issues. Just making sure, votes coming up. You all good on this? Do you need anything? And this last one, do the work when it comes time to get the votes. And this very much goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Do the work when it comes time to get the votes. Yes, it is their job to cast the vote. You, as the advocates, it is your job to do all those things that Kathy had in the pyramid. It is your job to rally the community and to get basically the political will to make them feel like this is the right choice, right? And different elected officials will need different things to make the right choice, or what you see as the right choice. And you can flat out ask them, what do you need to make the choice that I want you to make? For some of them, they'll say, I'm already making that choice, I'm good. Some of them will say, what I really need is a financial analysis. Okay, here's your financial analysis. What I really need is to hear from the community. Okay, get the calls, get the emails, get the people to show up at the meeting. What I really need is the person next to me to hear from the community. Maybe they don't need to hear from the community. Maybe they need the person next to them on the dais to hear from the community. Ask them what they need to get to yes and help them get it. Build a relationship before you need them. Don't leave people out. I think this is an important, this is something I was talking about at work today. Somebody said about a certain legislator, because of their political leanings, well, we're not even going to bother talking to him. And I said, I think we're going to talk to him. And I was elected as a Democrat, so it's no secret. This person is of a different party. I said, no, we talk to everybody. It doesn't matter that we have a super majority of Democrats in the General Assembly. You don't know when that's going to change. You also don't know, I don't know, when somebody can help you out for something else. So don't leave people out, especially then in nonpartisan situations in the municipality. Strange bedfellows all the time with the nonpartisans. Nobody ever sticks to one side or the other. So don't leave people out. Don't discount people. And always build the relationship for the next interaction. And I think that's the other thing too. Never, even if somebody doesn't stick with you on a certain vote, say, you know what, that's okay. I didn't convince you. I'll catch you next time. Preserve the relationship for the next time. This goes back to what I said earlier. Count your votes. Who do you definitely need? Who do you definitely got? Check in with them. Who definitely won't? Skip them. Who's on the fence? Spend your time there. Find out what they need to get to yes. Support your supporters. I kind of talked about this a little bit. Get them what they need. Ask them. Stay tight with your friends, accept that you won't always agree on everything. The Illinois Environmental Council puts out a scorecard. Some of their best friends don't get 100% ratings, but they still work with them. So accept that sometimes people won't vote with you for a variety of reasons. Leave the past in the past. Say thank you, so show support and appreciation. I think this is really important too. Especially right now, being an elected official and their staff can be emotionally tumultuous and trying. So say thank you. It's nice to hear it. There were certain people that when I worked for the senator, that when they called, I knew I could like relax, because I knew even if they were coming to ask for something, it was going to be an easy conversation. One was your wife. You can tell her that. Diane McGuire, Becky Simon, and Connie Schmidt are the first three that come to mind. They would just always come in and say thank you. And it was just so nice because most people came in with a big ask and sometimes aggressive, especially on the phone. So if you have a chance to say thank you to people, that's always nice. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before. This is my unpopular opinion. Elected officials are not there to do your bidding. We don't run referendums. We work with a representative democracy. If you feel your representatives are not representing you, you can, vote them out. But my favorite being an elected official was, if you don't vote the way I'm going to tell you, I want you to vote, I'm going to vote you out. Well, I'm not here to tally how many people tell me to vote one way or the other and go that way. That's actually not what you want me to do. That's not how a representative democracy works. A representative democracy works where you elect people, they pay careful attention to facts, data, and information, and they make what they believe is the best decision for the community going forward. And we may at any given time disagree with their analysis of that facts, data, and information. But we hope that that's what they're doing. I personally do not want someone who is simply making a tally chart of how many calls they got for and against a given issue. So I said, be very wary of elected officials who are telling you they are simply doing what their constituents want. There is no accurate way to gauge that. We know for a fact even political polls are like super wrong all the time. Like people who spend their lives running political polls are like 10 points wrong all the time. So how could I, as an elected official who does not have access to polling data, know what my constituents actually think on an issue? That's not how I should be making my decisions. I should be relying on experts on topics because I am not an expert on all topics. I should be listening to advocates who are very well experienced in a given area and saying, Bill and Kathy, this is not my area of expertise. Explain to me why this makes sense or doesn't. I should be relying on advocates to help me understand complex issues. I should not be relying on volumes of calls, angry calls, saying please vote one way or another necessarily. Unpopular opinion. That's why I'm not running for re-election. But as an advocate, your job is to help elected officials gain insight and understanding into a complex area that you may have greater understanding of than they do. You're serving them information that will become part of their decision-making process. That is the very important role that you serve as an advocate in democracy. It is different than simply just an average citizen calling up and saying, please vote yes or no. As an advocate, you are providing that information that is part of that decision-making process. Budget time is part of my exercise, which we'll have to do very fast if we have time. So that's the end of my kind of like spiel. Any questions? I mean, because we can skip the activity too. So thanks.
Excellent presentation.
Thanks, Ash.
So much.
Yeah, thanks.
What do you think? Q&A or?
Yeah, let's do Q&A and I'll tell you about the exercise. And we could always do it another time too.
Just one question.
Yeah.
about the witness slips. I was always thrilled to fill out one.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I fill the witness slip, I always see, the big industries like IMA or IRMA filling out the witness slip
Mhm.
also as a proponent or opponent.
Yeah.
Of any bill. Should we not be intimidated by that? So that's what causes the frenzy and tells you to go fill out the witness slip.
Yeah. I do think, so the question was, when you're filling out those witness slips, if you see a big organization like Illinois Manufacturers Association, that kind of causes a frenzy, like, oh my gosh, they're opposed to it, but we're for it. Like, maybe we should all put in for it, right? I see your point. So here's the thing. I'm trying to decide how harsh to be about this. Yes, you should fill out the witness slip. Let's say that. IMA is going to have a lot of swing. The one witness slip from IMA is going to have a lot more influence than dozens of I am filing as self witness slips. Because they are industry experts. It kind of goes to what I just said. The other reality here is money in politics. I hate to say it.
I will end at that. Yep.
And would I like to say that it's because they're an industry expert and in a pure world, Illinois Manufacturing Association and Mark Densler are saying, hey, if you pass this bill, it's gonna obliterate all Illinois manufacturing, and state legislators are saying, oh my gosh, then we can't pass this bill. Yes, I would love to say that. Is it probably more complex than that and may have something to do with campaign contributions? It may. So flex your political control all the ways you can, I would say, yes. But do understand that, yes, those big organizations and witness slips were made for those organizations in not necessarily a corrupt way, so that legislators could have that shorthand of where do these big organizations fall. And probably those organizations have gone to swing legislators and said, this is why we're opposed to this. And those big organizations too, they are beholden to their members, right? So they're beholden to their board of directors. So the board of directors of an IMA is saying, we want you to march in there and oppose this bill because of X, Y, and Z. So it's a funnel too. Does that help a little bit? Okay. What else? Are they, your things are mostly focused on the city, yes? Right. They mostly been focused on the city. I'm just thinking on the fly here. Okay, so to repeat the question, Nest's list of Christmas list, our want list is quite extensive. How do we prioritize? Is that shorthand? Decide what to go after. How do you prioritize your advocacy? Do you have any kind of like rubric or rating scale? Yeah. Okay. Because I was gonna say some sort of algorithm that's a combination of like budget neutral things, right? Because they would be very likely to do those, and like ease of doing, right? And time, like timeline of doing it, right? And then balance that with like priority for the group. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So if you could somehow like create some sort of like numerical algorithm. Okay. Got it. Well, I mean, that does kind of play into what you and I talked about a little bit. The budget, we're not going to have time to do the activity, which we could certainly talk about what I planned and we could do it. The budget is, like I said, not to be a Lord of the Rings dork, but it is the one ring that rules them all, right? If there is not staff time and resources budgeted for what you want, it's not going to happen, right? So the like precursor to any of your goals is the first thing you're advocating for is budget. I think that would be my shorthand answer. And it may be hard to get an answer of what that amount is, but I would say just start throwing numbers at a wall, if nothing else.
I have a comment or a question, but I know much of what we talked about. Creating critical mass of citizens and for a better, and making that clear. And using that, or maybe it's an addition to it. There's a bit of a challenge there. It's not so maybe it's just a compliment that how I'm receiving this, and maybe you have any get that. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? I will. No, go ahead. Oh, okay. Oh, I was going to say, I'll take that because I think there is actually a tension there, right? That I think that when I say it's not a referendum, I think what I mean is that an individual vote cannot be run as a referendum. I mean, it could be, but like we don't run individual votes as referendum. But change over time is a groundswell, is social change developing into political change, developing into governmental change, right? So I do think the work you're doing as a roots organization is absolutely critical, and getting that momentum to lift up the people who are going to be making those votes is. So I don't want to be mistaken in that
Yeah,
way.
That's good to hear. We are all awareness. Other relationships. We're hearing. it.
Yeah.
We should do that. So we need to do better. So this is very complimentary.
Yeah. And I think to your point too, if there's someone who, you know, let's say there's someone on council who isn't like a hardcore climate change denier, but they're just not really in tune to it, right? But if the folks in this room kind of become omnipresent in their sphere and are sort of like always mentioning it and talking about it, and there's people showing up at the meetings, and it kind of just seeps into them, and they sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, become brainwashed. Oops. You know, if they become slowly convinced, they become educated. That's a much better word. If they become convinced that this is something that the majority of people want, and it's an okay and friendly thing to do, well, that's the way to do it, right? Yeah. I can't believe I just said brainwash.
Educated.
Educated, re-educated, yeah.
Following up.
Yeah.
I took one science class in
Mhm.
college. And now 60 years later,
Yeah.
I had an old professor named Cephas Steve.
Okay.
He always said, it's a public problem. It has to be a public problem.
Yeah.
He sent, and somebody in Granville, Ohio, had a little boy bitten by a mosquito, got encephalitis. And he sent me the meeting and find out how they convinced the city and the county to drain the swamps. And they had science, but they had emotion,
Yeah.
and they had a sense of people in the neighborhood getting worried that their kid might get encephalitis. So they, you know, they built it up as a public problem, more so than the science part.
Yeah.
if you will.
100%.
And it sounds a little bit like the Greens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were playing on kind of the heartstrings, because not that many legislators have kids with
Right.
problems, but they somehow turned that into a public problem without a lot of science. So
Right.
it seems to me that the left hand and the right hand need to work together.
I think you're very much right. I think as much as this kind of bums me out, it's probably not science that makes most of our decisions. It's probably the emotional pleas, right?
So we got an A.
Good job. I mean, that's kind of cool. So you actually went and met with people?
Oh, yeah. That was
Your thesis? It's kind of wild.
my class. I'd forgotten all about it until.
You're like, hey, I studied this. Yeah, and I do think you're right. I mean, I think that points to something, the emotional plea of things is, you know, you're gonna get legislators. This goes back to the know your audience thing. If you're talking to Bill Foster, come with your facts and data and science. That's all you need. That's fine. He'll be convinced. But somebody else, you might not even want to mention that at all, you know? So did you say there were questions online? No, okay. I should probably stop.
Are you available for advice if we have?
Of course.
questions and challenges?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I like. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll tell you. So I will tell you what the there's my email. What? You email me? Like, actually, you can ask Bill. It's like 68% effective. So the exercise I put together, I wrote up 12 profiles of elected officials, and I was going to assign you each a profile. And then I put together like a synopsis of a draft budget, and I was going to put you together in a group with maybe 9 other people. And I was going to say, okay, you're an elected body. Now you have to pass a budget. But you had to stay within your profile as an elected official. That's right. So, and I actually based the profiles on my fellow Will County board members. So some of you were gonna have a real fun time. So, yeah, so, but thank you all so much. Thank you for the work you do. And, come visit me and the dinosaurs. So.
Thank you so much. So, this is our next step, so of course, please come on September 25th. And please get involved in that event by signing up in front. And start thinking about how you want to personally or as part of Nest to reach out to your elected officials. And we will continue to build these skills and, build the momentum to get some things going, especially here locally. Yes, Bruce. So the question was, do we have a list of our city council members and their attitudes sort of about our coal situation? We do not, but I think that Ashfaq, Carl, and I are attempting to get meetings with each of our city council members ahead of the September 25th meeting, which I think is exactly what you would advise us to do based on. So thank you so much for coming. And again, if you want to get more involved, you can reach out to us now or learn more about what we're doing in October. And then I think in November, we are maybe going to switch things up a bit and talk more about what you can do like in your homes and your personal lives to reduce your carbon. And take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act and other incentives. And maybe bring people in that from your religious institutions or businesses or what have you, that they can take advantage of these incentives as well. So that's all the stuff that's coming up that we'd love for you to get involved with. And I have, if anyone didn't get one of these, wants to take one or two, pass them around to your friends to invite folks to come on the 25th. So thanks for coming. Good to see you all. Yes. Okay.
Also at the end, telling you things to do. And it goes.
Okay. Great. So I'm just going to repeat that for the people on Zoom. The Greta Thunberg book is highly recommended as helping you understand what you can do, what the state of the climate is, and how you can get politically involved as well. Yes.
Getting involved, local level, this Wednesday, League of Women Voters in the city are sponsoring based on the studies, we believe the voters did, this thing.
So just quickly repeating that, Wednesday night here, the city and the League of Women Voters is going to be talking about our boards and commissions and how to get involved. Christine,
PSA, public service announcement.
you know what? I'm just going to bring this over to you.
Level of that pyramid. I have a public service announcement, that would address your own individual actions. Lyle Township is now having a very comprehensive recycling program Monday through Friday with partners from Scarce, Working Bikes, Lions Clubs for Glasses, eWorks. It's really awesome. So if everybody could just take one and be aware, because we all know people who live in Lyle Township. And it's, of course, it's open really to anybody. So just come on, and we want to make it a great success. Thank you.
Anybody else? Announcements? This is community, right? That's good. All right, thank you. Good night, everyone.